Henry Carter's days began long before the sun rose. At 5 a.m., he slipped into his worn-out work boots, their soles patched up more times than he cared to admit, and quietly left the modest two-bedroom house he shared with his wife, Linda. It was a ritual he had perfected over the years, leaving without waking her, sparing her the worry of another long day of labor. Their home, nestled in a working-class neighborhood, was a far cry from the life he once envisioned. But Henry had long since learned to bury those dreams beneath the weight of responsibility. At 54, Henry was a janitor at Orion Tech Solutions, a cutting-edge facility where innovation happened at breakneck speed. Robots whirred in pristine labs, scientists debated breakthroughs, and sleek conference rooms hosted executives plotting the future of humanity. Henry, broom in hand, was a ghost in this world of progress, a man unnoticed by those racing to build the next big thing. Yet, he carried himself with quiet dignity, treating every task with care. Whether it was cleaning glass walls so spotless they looked invisible or ensuring the break room was immaculate before the morning rush. Once, he had been a machinist, a skilled craftsman who took pride in his work. Back then, he built parts for engines, his hands steady and precise. But the factory where he worked shut down during a wave of automation and outsourcing. Efficiency, they called it. Henry called it a death sentence for people like him. The loss of his job sent his life into a tailspin. After months of fruitless job searches and dwindling savings, he accepted the janitorial position. It wasn't what he wanted, but it kept food on the table and the lights on. Henry's wife, Linda, was battling lupus, a chronic illness that left her in constant pain. The medical bills piled up, eating away at their finances. Their son, Jason, was in his first year of college, studying engineering, a dream Henry and Linda had sacrificed everything to support. Henry felt a flicker of pride every time Jason called to share a story about his classes, but it was always tempered by worry. How much longer could they afford tuition? How long before Jason would need to take out crippling loans? As Henry walked into the building that night, the weight of these worries pressed down on him. It was his second shift of the day, overtime to cover Jason's books for the semester. The tech facility was eerily quiet after hours, the hum of machines the only sound. Henry didn't mind the solitude. It gave him time to think, though these days his thoughts were heavy. The young employees at Orion Tech rarely noticed him, but he noticed them. Fresh out of college, they zipped around the building in sneakers, carrying laptops and ideas. They were bright-eyed and optimistic, the way Henry had once been. He often wondered what it would be like to start over, to have opportunities like they did. But those thoughts felt like luxury. His world was one of bills, deadlines, and exhaustion. There was one thing, however, that gave Henry a sense of pride: his work ethic. No matter how invisible he felt, he believed every task had value. He liked to imagine the scientists and engineers appreciated the clean, organized environment he maintained. In a small way, he felt like part of something bigger, even if no one said it out loud. But deep down, a quiet resentment simmered. He had skills beyond pushing a mop or fixing a clogged sink. He was a problem solver, a craftsman. Yet in the eyes of society, he was just the janitor. That label stung. Henry told himself it didn't matter, that he was providing for his family. But there were nights when the injustice of it all kept him awake. As he mopped the hallway that night, Henry caught his reflection in the glass wall of a conference room. His shoulders were stooped, his face lined with years of toil. The man staring back at him looked older than his years, but his eyes still held a spark, a stubborn refusal to let life's hardships extinguish his spirit. Little did Henry know that spark would soon be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. His quiet existence, unnoticed by the world, was about to collide with a man who shaped the world itself. And nothing would ever be the same. Henry Carter hadn't planned to stay late that evening, but as always, overtime was his silent obligation. Bills didn't pay themselves, and Jason's college expenses weren't going anywhere. With his cart of supplies in tow, Henry methodically made his way down the gleaming hallways of Orion Tech Solutions. By now, he knew the building like the back of his hand. The whirring of the labs, the faint hum of server rooms, and the eerie silence of executive offices after hours. It was nearing 11 p.m. when Henry noticed something unusual. A light was still on in the executive wing. Normally, by this time, even the most ambitious employees had gone home, their energy drained after long meetings and brainstorming sessions. Curiosity tugged at him. As Henry approached the source of the light, he was startled to find none other than Elon Musk. Yes, that Elon Musk, standing in a conference room, his phone pressed to his ear, frustration etched across his face. Henry froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. He knew Musk occasionally visited Orion Tech, one of the many companies he had a stake in, but seeing the billionaire in person was surreal. "I don't care if it's late. I need that data tonight." Musk barked into his phone, pacing the room. "The announcement is tomorrow. No excuses." Henry watched from the hallway, unsure if he should interrupt. As Musk ended the call with an exasperated sigh, he turned and noticed Henry standing there. "Hey, you," Musk said, pointing. "You work here?" "Yes, sir," Henry replied, gripping his mop handle nervously. "I'm the janitor." "Perfect timing. Do you know if there's a backup system for the lab servers?" "The main power's down, and I need access to some files immediately." Henry hesitated. He wasn't supposed to interfere with the equipment, but the desperation in Musk's tone was impossible to ignore. "I think there's a manual override in the maintenance room," he said cautiously. "I could take a look, but it might take a minute." "Do it," Musk said, already pulling up something on his tablet. "Every minute counts." Henry led Musk to the maintenance room, a dimly lit area that few employees even knew existed. As Musk tapped away at his tablet, Henry assessed the situation. The backup system wasn't working because a circuit had tripped. Years of working with machinery kicked in, and Henry instinctively began troubleshooting. "Do you have any tools?" Henry asked. Musk gestured to a toolbox on a nearby shelf. "Help yourself." With steady hands, Henry rewired the circuit, bypassing the faulty connection. Within minutes, the system roared back to life. Musk's tablet lit up, displaying the files he needed. "You're a genius," Musk said, glancing at Henry with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "I thought I was screwed." Henry shrugged, his face betraying a hint of pride. "Just doing what I can, sir." As Musk hurried off to finish his work, Henry returned to his cart, his heart pounding. He couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, though he didn't yet realize how much it would change his life. The next morning, Henry Carter walked into work with a faint sense of pride. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind. The way he had solved the problem under pressure, the genuine thanks he'd received from none other than Elon Musk himself. For the first time in a long while, Henry felt like more than just a janitor. He felt valuable. But that feeling didn't last long. As Henry pushed his cleaning cart through the hallways, the head of facilities, Mr. Travers, approached him with an unfamiliar sternness in his eyes. Travers was a middle management type, always more concerned with looking good to his bosses than addressing the needs of his staff. "Henry, I need you to come to my office," Travers said, his voice clipped. Confused but compliant, Henry followed. The office was small and cluttered, its walls adorned with motivational posters that now felt like cruel irony. Travers gestured for Henry to sit, but the tone of the interaction immediately made Henry uneasy. "There's been an issue," Travers began, avoiding eye contact. "It's come to my attention that you accessed restricted areas and tampered with company equipment last night." Henry blinked, taken aback. "Tampered? Sir, I was helping Mr. Musk. He needed access to the backup system, and Travers raised a hand to cut him off. "I understand you thought you were helping, but that's not your job, Henry. What if something had gone wrong? Do you realize the liability this creates for the company?" Henry's heart sank. Liability? He had fixed the issue and helped save the day. Why was he being treated like a criminal? "With all due respect, sir, I've worked here for years and I know my way around the maintenance systems. If I hadn't stepped in, Mr. Musk wouldn't have gotten the files he needed." Travers sighed, leaning back in his chair. "This isn't about what you did or didn't do. It's about staying in your lane. I've been instructed by upper management to let you go." The words hit Henry like a punch to the gut. "Let me go," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're firing me? After everything I've done for this place?" "I'm sorry, Henry," Travers said, though his tone lacked sincerity. "This decision isn't personal. You're a good worker, but rules are rules. Henry felt his chest tighten with anger and disbelief. After years of loyal service, he was being discarded like yesterday's trash, all because he dared to help. As he packed up his belongings that afternoon, Henry's mind raced. How would he tell Linda? How would they pay the bills, let alone Jason's tuition? The pride he had felt just hours earlier was now replaced with a crushing sense of injustice. As Henry left the building for what he thought was the last time, he couldn't help but glance back at the gleaming sign above the entrance. Orion Tech Solutions, innovating the future. The irony stung. In their quest for progress, they had no room for someone like him. Little did Henry know, this was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning. That evening, Henry sat at his kitchen table, staring at a pile of unpaid bills. His termination papers lay to the side, a stark reminder of how quickly his world had unraveled. The flickering kitchen light overhead cast long shadows across the room, amplifying the silence that surrounded him. Linda was in bed, resting after a particularly tough day with her lupus symptoms, and Jason was still at the library, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing at home. Henry's mind churned with emotions: anger, frustration, disbelief, and most of all, despair. He replayed the events of the day over and over in his head. He had only been trying to help, and yet he had been punished for it. Was this the cost of doing the right thing? He felt small, powerless, and expendable, a cog discarded by a machine that no longer needed him. As he leaned back in his chair, Henry's phone buzzed on the table, breaking the oppressive quiet. He stared at the screen, not recognizing the number. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. He wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone, but something compelled him to pick up. "Hello," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Henry Carter," a familiar voice asked. "Yes," Henry replied cautiously. "This is Elon Musk. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." Henry froze. Certain he must have misheard. "Elon Musk?" he repeated, incredulous. I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "Well, I wasn't expecting to need your help last night, but here we are," Musk said, his tone lighter than it had been during their brief encounter. "Listen, I found out what happened after I left. You were fired for helping me. Is that correct?" Henry hesitated, unsure how to respond. Yes, that's right," he admitted. "I was told I overstepped." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Musk spoke again, his voice was tinged with irritation. Not at Henry, but at the situation. "That's unacceptable. You solved the problem no one else could, and they let you go? Ridiculous." Henry didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to vent his frustrations, to tell Musk everything, but another part of him wasn't sure it would make any difference. People like Musk didn't concern themselves with people like him, or so he thought. "I called because I want to fix this," Musk continued. "Your skills, your quick thinking, they're wasted in a janitorial role. I run into people with resumes a mile long, but most of them don't have the kind of resourcefulness you showed last night. I've been thinking, I want to bring you onto my team." Henry nearly dropped the phone. "Your team?" he echoed, his voice shaky. "I don't think I'm qualified for anything like that." "Don't sell yourself short," Musk replied firmly. "I'm starting a new initiative, a think tank focused on creating affordable tech for underserved communities. We need people who understand real-world problems and can think outside the box." "That's you?" Henry's heart pounded in his chest. Was this a joke? A cruel dream? He didn't know what to say. "I'll have my assistant send you the details," Musk said, breaking the silence. "Take some time to think about it, but I hope you'll say yes. People like you don't come around often." As the call ended, Henry sat frozen, staring at the phone in his hand. For the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, his life was about to change. Henry Carter's life shifted in a way he never imagined. 2 weeks after Elon Musk's unexpected call, Henry found himself standing outside a sleek office building in downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't just any office. It was the headquarters for Musk's new initiative, Vision Tech Solutions, a project aimed at creating affordable, life-changing technology for underserved communities. Henry had been hesitant to accept the offer at first, plagued by doubts about his own abilities. But Elon's insistence, and a growing sense of wanting to prove himself, ultimately won out. Walking into the building on his first day, Henry felt like an imposter. The lobby was a hive of activity. Young, bright-eyed professionals hurried by, their conversations laced with technical jargon Henry barely understood. He adjusted the ill-fitting suit he'd borrowed from a neighbor, wishing he could blend into the walls. He might have been starting a new chapter, but his years as a janitor clung to him like a second skin. Elon greeted him personally, shaking his hand with a firm grip. "Henry," he said with a smile, "welcome to the team. Don't worry about not having a tech background. What you bring to the table is perspective, and that's something most of us lack." Henry was assigned to a team of engineers working on developing solar-powered devices for remote areas with unreliable electricity. His role wasn't to design the tech, but to evaluate its practical applications and offer feedback on how it could be improved for real-world users. At first, Henry felt out of place in meetings. He didn't know the terminology, and he was surrounded by people with degrees from prestigious universities. But as the days went by, his confidence began to grow. It turned out that Henry's hands-on experience and blue-collar background gave him an edge. While others debated theoretical efficiency metrics, Henry could immediately point out flaws in design. This handle's too small for someone wearing gloves in the cold, or this hinge will break if it's used every day. His insights, though simple, were invaluable, and his teammates began to see him as an asset. Outside of work, Henry wrestled with self-doubt. Was this really his life now? Could he keep up with the expectations of someone like Elon Musk? Every time he questioned himself, he thought about Linda and Jason. His wife, though still battling her illness, was beaming with pride when he told her about the job. Jason, too, had called from college, his voice brimming with excitement. "Dad, you're working with Elon Musk. That's amazing." For the first time in years, Henry felt like a hero to his family. Weeks turned into months, and Henry's transformation became evident. His confidence grew, not just in his role, but in himself. He began mentoring younger team members, sharing stories of his time as a machinist and the lessons he'd learned about perseverance. In one particularly pivotal moment, he led a project to simplify a solar-powered lantern design, cutting production costs in half while making it more durable for rural communities. The product became a flagship success for the initiative. Henry wasn't just an employee at VisionTech. He became a symbol of what the company stood for. His journey from janitor to innovator inspired everyone around him, proving that brilliance isn't confined to degrees or titles. For Henry, it was more than a new job. It was a chance to rewrite his story. Henry Carter's rise within VisionTech Solutions became the kind of story people love to tell. It wasn't just about his transition from janitor to innovator. It was about the tangible change he brought to the world. The solar-powered lantern project he had spearheaded was just the beginning. Over the next year, Henry worked on a range of products, from affordable water filtration devices to durable phone chargers designed for regions without reliable electricity. Each project carried a piece of Henry's soul. He remembered what it was like to live paycheck to paycheck, to have to choose between paying a bill and fixing something broken. That perspective made him invaluable to the team. When engineers presented sleek, costly designs, Henry would ask the hard questions. What happens when this breaks? How does someone in a remote village repair it without fancy tools? His insights grounded the company's work, ensuring their innovations served real people, not just theoretical markets. As word of his contribution spread, Henry's name began to appear in articles and blogs. A feature in a major tech magazine described him as the heart of VisionTech, a man whose life story embodied the company's mission. The media attention was overwhelming at first, but Henry embraced it as an opportunity to speak for people like him, those who had been overlooked and undervalued by society. His personal life also flourished. Linda's health improved with the help of better medical care made possible by Henry's new income, and Jason graduated college debt-free. At the graduation ceremony, Jason hugged his father tightly, tears in his eyes. "You've always been my hero, Dad, but now the whole world knows it." The culmination of Henry's journey came at a global technology summit, where Elon Musk invited him to the stage to present VisionTech's latest product, a portable, multi-purpose power hub designed for disaster relief. Standing under the bright lights, looking out at an audience of tech giants, government officials, and journalists, Henry felt a surge of pride. "People like me don't often get a seat at this table," he began, his voice steady and clear. "But I'm here to tell you that innovation isn't just about fancy degrees or high-tech labs. It's about understanding people, what they need, what they face, and how we can help. I'm proof that with the right opportunity, anyone can make a difference." The audience erupted into applause, and for the first time, Henry felt truly seen, not just as a janitor, not just as a man who caught a lucky break, but as someone who had earned his place through hard work, resilience, and heart. As the summit ended, Henry stood alongside Elon Musk, watching as journalists buzzed around them. Musk turned to him and said, "You're not just part of this team, Henry. You've changed it." Henry smiled, thinking back to the night he almost gave up, the pile of bills, the despair. Life had thrown him into a storm, but he had come out stronger, proving that even in the darkest moments, redemption is possible. And this time, Henry wasn't just a cog in someone else's machine. He was building something that mattered, a legacy.